Welcome to the WRC Podcast. I'm your host, Katrina M, and you're in the right place. Here at the Well-Rounded Counselor Podcast, what you can expect is to learn, shift your thinking, and gain personal and professional growth. And if you have not yet done so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another podcast episode. The conversation starts now. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the WRC Podcast. I'm so excited to have you guys join me this week for another amazing interview. I have this amazing guest and I cannot wait to introduce her. But before I do, as you know, it means so much to me, you faithful listeners that listen to my podcast from all over the world, to just leave me that simple little rating here on Spotify. It goes a long, long ways. And all of you that are listening, just click that little star button and leave me a rating. And it just kicks up the algorithm so people know how to get in touch with me, and they find this podcast much easier when people suggest it. So do me that favor, quickly pause it and come right back. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce my amazing guest, and I'm so excited because I've been following her and all the amazing work she's been doing here in the UAE. Her name is Maria Vitoratos, also known as Miss V. She is a careers educator and thought leader. She is the founder of the UAE Careers Community and an avid careers practitioner who engages with colleagues across the globe. Maria continues to strive to change the conversation from what university degree do you want to complete to what do you want to bring to the world, and how can post-secondary experiences and education help you achieve these career and life goals. Maria is an active member of the global careers education community and finds every opportunity to enrich her skill set so she can create a careers provision that will both prepare and ignite enthusiasm in the youth in her educational institution and in the UAE. Follow Maria Vitoratos on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Without further ado, I am so excited to have you here, Maria. Welcome to the WRC Podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm just so excited to be here with you today, Katrina.
I'm excited for you to be here too. Thank you so much. Now, Maria, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became a careers coach.
That's a really interesting journey. And I wish there was a really linear way to get to that, but it wasn't that at all. It kind of found me, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
And, I started my career as a primary school teacher and made my way through, I think what most teachers do is that professional development. And I was at a crossroads of, do I do a master's in education, or if not, what will I do? And all of my colleagues at that time, they were all doing master's degrees. And although it looked right on paper, it didn't feel right to me. And then I came across my very first mentor, Joanne Simpson, who was the pioneer of coaching, executive coaching here in the Middle East. She was based in Dubai, and her enthusiasm was so contagious that I ended up becoming one of her 4 students on an executive coaching and mentoring course. And then from there, I found myself retiring from teaching and found myself in self-employment, which felt like unemployment when you came from the world of a teacher, because suddenly I was on the road less traveled at that time. And it was really then between coaching executives that I was being asked to mediate conversations between parents and their teenagers. And that went on for a couple of years. And then one day I got a knock on my office door from a group of teenagers who heard about me, and I don't know how, but they did. They heard about me and asked for an internship. And of course, any entrepreneur listening to this right now is probably thinking, free work, hello, how many of you are there? So we ended up collaborating, and these teenagers thought they were doing an internship with me, but actually what they were doing was really guiding me on my next path, which was the path to where I am today. And so in the almost 2 years that they were working with me, there were a group of 10 students that came every single Saturday for almost 2 years. And every week I thought they won't come today, and they were always there. And we put on amazing events, and then life took a different twist which led me down having to make the choice of closing my consultancy at that time. And I was then asked to join a school that I had applied to for a teaching role. And they had asked me to set up a careers service, which was really where it all kind of formalized for me. Up until that point, I was an executive coach and a teacher. I had done a few part-time jobs growing up as a teenager. I think most teenagers outside of the UAE would have grown up doing that. But I never identified myself as a careers educator. And so in that first year, the conversations that I was having with teachers and students and parents, I realized that there was nothing else I wanted to do. But I didn't have any formal training or any kind of formal training that fit the category of what most people thought careers practitioners did at the time. It was really, anytime anyone spoke to me about what I did, they always assumed I wrote applications for students going to university. And I was like, no, that's not at all what I do. We do have that conversation, but actually, this is what I do. And I was always the only person in the room, which kind of felt weird. And so 7 years, fast forward to where we are today, I have formalized my training. I did a postgraduate degree in career development. I've set up this incredible service. I'm an active researcher. I founded a community that brings together more practitioners doing what I do. And I guess that's what led me to where I am today.
That's super cool. And as the founder of the UAE Careers Community, what is your role and how has this impacted other professionals or people? Who is your community involved with?
So that's a really interesting story because it all started, I think, about 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. I had a line manager who told me to stop telling him how great the work was. And he wanted me to prove it. And by prove it in teachers' terms, that meant quantify it. You can't just say it's great. You have to actually show numbers to back it up. So I decided to do some market research and did some mystery shopping to find out what other schools were doing in terms of careers education. And it was then that I realized no one's talking about this. And in most of the, actually, I had done mystery shopping for over 15 prominent schools in the UAE, all across the UAE. And I realized that we went from our institution doing everything to institutions not even having university application support, which really shocked me. And in that journey, I was then invited to do a talk at an up and coming event. And I was invited to be the speaker because I was the only one not talking about university applications. So, I mean, that's what got me onto that. And I remember standing on the stage and talking about the importance of careers education. And the next thing I knew, I'm sure any speaker out there, you're up there, the adrenaline rush of being on a stage, and then you're so inspired by the drive and the enthusiasm from the audience. And I heard myself saying, if anybody else out there would like to have this conversation with me, I'd love to be part of that with you. And I really only thought it would become me and a couple of people if I was lucky. And the next thing I know, there's a group of 5 or 6 of us meeting every month. And we called ourselves the UAE Careers Community. So as a founder, I believe I was the person that had the party, and everybody came to the party, and they're really why this community is what it is. So I think as a founder, I don't give myself any credit in terms of what the community has become, because I was just the person that got the message and decided to act on it. And I think most founders will say the same, is that, I think the ideas come to many people, but there are always some people that take the call and take the action. And then some people think, I don't think I have time for that. So I think as the founder, I received the message. I put the call out, but the incredible people that joined me on that journey are really how a community came together. And then we're celebrating our 3-year anniversary this month, which is really exciting. And we are now able to bring together career practitioners who tend to be university advisors in different institutions. But what's great is we also have higher education professionals. We have professionals from industries. We have students and we have teachers and we have families who really just want to learn more who come to our meetings. And what we talk about is the world of work, and we look at what kinds of skills exist and how as a community we can be helping young people to gain the awareness that they need in order for them to take that path forward. So we have these conversations, and the mission is how can we come together as a global community, and this is it. So the name is, we're the UAE Careers Community, and that's where it all began, with bringing, in my mind back then, I thought there have to be more people that talk about careers education. Who would they be? Obviously they would be counselors in schools that talk about careers education, and if we were lucky we'd have school leaders come in. But we've evolved since that time, and it's now our understanding that you cannot educate a young person about the world of work without having every single voice in the room. And so our meetings bring together everybody that wants to be in conversation, everyone that is passionately interested in helping guide young people. And most of our members now, they are career advisors, but the numbers are climbing in terms of other voices in our community. And we're now able to, because of the pandemic, which was a real blessing in disguise. And I know that's weird to hear, but what the pandemic taught the community was that we now had the ability to have the world at a Zoom call. And that meant that it was okay for people around the world that would want to participate. And of course, we're playing around with time zones most times, but that's really who the community is. It's people that are interested in guiding young people. And it's as many voices that we can bring into the room.
Who has been some of like your most influential people?
So I don't want to name drop, only because every voice is important. And I think when you're working on a project that doesn't really exist in any other capacity, what we have to remember is that everybody's voice is an equal voice, and the power of a voice. So when you bring in community members, what you don't know is who else will come and join you. So we've had CEOs, and one of our core members is a CEO of an academic group, which is absolutely incredible. But we've also had voices of young people that have brought influential voices into the room. So I think everybody's voice is equally important. And the power of the message is the secret to success when you're working on a social project. And the UAE Careers Community really is a social project. And so the power of everybody's voice, and social media has allowed our voices to go even further. So although it would be great to name drop, I'm not going to, only because then that would mean that some voices are more important than others. And it's really not like that at the community.
I love how you've created this environment. First of all, I learned about it because I follow you on LinkedIn and I follow the amazing work that you're doing, and I was I was intrigued by the efforts that you have made, the strides you've made. You've kind of been a little bit of a trailblazer for this from what I was reading. And I found your website and I was reading your bio and I was like, wow, she's even written a book. She has all these like cool things and projects. We all want to feel like important, like we got something cool going on, And I was like, wow, I was blown away. And speaking of having an influential voice, I know you've written a book. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
So the book was really something that I needed to do as an opportunity to open a few education doors in terms of schools like books. And I knew that this was really at the beginning of my journey. And when I started the work that I was doing for the institution, I knew that I was saying something different. And that's where that tagline, I want to change the conversation. Everybody around me was talking about university applications. And I am so pro education, but I'm an advocate for intentional education. And I see higher education as professional development. So it's kind of playing with words somewhat. And I decided that I wanted to put these ideas down in a book that could have my voice reach out in areas that I might not be able to. It's not even a book. I call it a guide. And they're just some of the steps that I would take with the young people that I would work with way back in the beginning of my career when I was first beginning this journey through careers education. Whenever I look back at the book, I think there's so many things missing. I definitely need to be writing new chapters and updating that book, which is definitely on the plan. But the book was an opportunity for me to have parents, educators, young people have something in their hands that might ask them questions that no one's really ever asked them before. So one of the chapters that definitely needs a retweak because of a life situation that came my way is really thinking about, what do you want to leave behind? Looking back at the mission of what you're doing. And I think people, regardless of your age, it's this intentional voice that you want to have. And that's what the book was geared at. It's stop thinking about your future on autopilot and start questioning the choices that you're making. Start to ask yourself some really important questions. And I was able to do that and capture it in this very short guide that I'm really proud of, and somewhat look at and think, oh gosh, I really need to make a few changes to that. But that was the careers education in progress.
I love it. So the book is titled Empowerment for Teens, a guide to helping young adults prepare for their futures. I'm going to leave that in the show notes so people can find your guide, find the book. I know it's on Amazon. It's very affordable. So I encourage you guys, if you have a chance, check out Maria's book. I think it could really help a lot of people ask yourself these very important self-reflective questions that we all need to do from time to time, no matter which age, no matter which stage we might be in. Even if we might want to go for probably a career change, there might be helpful questions. Am I right?
Definitely. And those questions I've used with people from 6 years old all the way up to 73 years old and more. I use those questions on myself all the time. And they're not, some of those questions are not even, I don't own most of those. They're questions we ask ourselves anyway, but I think it's how we ask them and it's how we put them in context of our lives. So definitely, definitely a self-reflective practice that anyone could do at any age.
Absolutely. So I know you are a huge advocate for youth. Can you tell us a little bit about this hashtag strong movement that you've done?
So hashtag strong is completely the opposite to everything that I'm doing in terms of what it's about, but it actually resonates perfectly with the mission of empowering the youth. Hashtag strong it's also a social project that I started after I lost my daughter to suicide in late 2019. And I remember when it happened, I wasn't even thinking about, you know, creating anything. Again, it was one of those things that found me, Katrina. And I was going through those early stages of grief and trying to, make sense of why my child would have done this. And the constant repetitive comment that I was hearing was, you have to be strong. And I would get rewarded or recognized and complimented for not showing emotion. And I understood that strong for the outside world meant that I wasn't crying or I wasn't showing any deep sadness. And I think that it was when I heard somebody tell, oh, I don't think I know, it was when I heard somebody tell my then 14 and a half-year-old daughter that she had to be strong, was like, no, we have got to do something different. And so I found a videographer who I wanted to work with and asked him what he was going to do the next week. And he was like, why? And I said, it's time that I tell my story, and I want to invite other people to do the same. And so that was the birth of hashtag strong. And hashtag strong is a video podcast, but it's an opportunity for people around the world to talk about life through their eyes. When it first began, so hashtag strong, when we first started, was talking to women, I decided to speak with women, I think because it just made sense then. It's kind of like the way the UAE Careers Community began. In my mind, it was who would what I want to talk to. And because my daughter was female and I was female, I decided that I would speak with women about life, and it started right before the pandemic had hit. And luckily, we've gone so strong. We recorded 13 episodes. So I convinced 13 women to talk to me about life, which totally blew me away. I just couldn't believe that they would want to. And then the pandemic hit, and I came back, and somebody commented a really harsh comment about not including men into the conversation. And I realized this person was right. And so from there, I decided to interview men. And so fast forward, I mean, the first episode was February 2020, and here we are right now. I have interviewed over 76 people from all over
Wow.
the world. And it all is for the common mission of helping a young person by helping parents and educators listen to stories of resilience and listen to stories of how people make choices. And so by empowering the youth, what we can't just do is think in terms of how we're teaching them in the classroom or what we're doing in the careers guidance counselor office. It really is about every person in the world has, I believe, a role to play. And the African proverb now makes sense to me. I remember growing up and being told, it takes a village, Maria, it takes a village. And through hashtag strong, I began to understand what that meant. And so by interviewing and listening to these stories, young people may not be listening to them because I think that the platform probably isn't set up for the interest of a young person, but I know that somebody will listen to it, and that somebody might have a conversation with a young person one day. And when I was going through the challenges as a mom with my daughter, I knew at a gut instinct there was something not right. But everyone I turned to talk to, nobody had gone through this situation. Nobody had gone through what I was going through. And this was before we lost Dania. And I remember thinking after we lost her, if I only had heard somebody's story, somebody that was experiencing what I could understand and learn from, maybe I could cope differently with it. And that's what these interviews are about. But I'm a child of the Oprah Winfrey Show. I grew up setting the dining room table with Oprah on in the background, and I think that's where the inspiration came from. I wanted these episodes to be in the background. I wanted it to be somebody saying, you know what, I saw this episode of this person. Why don't you watch it? I think you might find that really interesting. So that's how we empower the youth with hashtag strong.
I absolutely love that. And I'm so glad I asked that question because like I said, I was perusing your website and I was like, what is this? This looks really just awe-inspiring. And I had to ask you, and I'm so thankful that you shared what that purpose and mission is, because I know by having the platform like that or having a podcast like mine, somebody's going to hear this message and it's going to be in divine timing. They're going to need to know how to cope with something or hear a story, and it's just going to put them on a totally different trajectory that they may not have been on if they didn't listen to maybe what you've shared. And thank you for creating that. And I definitely want to listen to some of the episodes. 76 is a huge number, so keep going. Uh, I know that there are people out there who have explored this idea of maybe becoming a careers coach. What advice would you have for someone who is maybe considering becoming one, and what kind of skills would they need to consider or experiences?
I love that question. I think it's a really important question. I think the first thing I would suggest for anyone interested in becoming a careers practitioner or careers educator is to, number one, understand who your audience is going to be. A practitioner can be helping any age group, any age category, and I don't believe that there's any more important than any other. And I think at every stage of life, a careers practitioner is probably the best friend you never knew you needed until you do. So if there is somebody thinking about being a practitioner, lock down the age category you want to be working with, and then become a specialist in that age category. And what you don't want to do is bring your opinions to work. And this is really important. And I see this when I'm working with practitioners is, yeah, no, I don't think that's a good idea for them. And I think we have to remember our role is to bring the information to the table. And it's not our job to say whether it's the right choice or the wrong choice. Our job is to bring it to the table and let the person that we're helping understand all the pros and all the challenges that exist, and trusting that they can make that next choice that's right for them. So know who your audience is, understand the boundary of what you believe is your job and what really is your job. And then you need to be very, very creative. A careers practitioner, regardless of the age category, wants to ensure that the person they're helping is developing skills of resilience, agility, creativity. When you're thinking about defining a career, what you don't want to do is make them dependent on you. What you do want to do is create opportunities, bring as many people to the opportunities that you provide for them, but teach them the skills that they need. So you have to be a creative person. And then, of course, I'm an advocate for being qualified to do what you do. And I'm not saying that one degree is better than another. It's important how we use our qualifications. But one thing that will always remain the same is that when you are doing any type of formal education, there's a requirement for reading and gaining knowledge, for helping you to become reflexive. And I think if you're not going to formalize that for yourself, then make sure that somewhere in your informal learning that you're spending time doing that. Because the difference between a qualified practitioner and a practitioner who is not qualified is the ability to really understand that you're not doing it on your own, and to understand that you need to bring other people in. So you have to be able to identify what skills you have and what skills you don't, so that you can be bringing in those other people. So you want to be qualified not just formally, but also informally. And then any amazing careers practitioner has got to be a social butterfly in the networking room. You cannot do this job on your own. You really need a tribe of people all over the world. And I think the idea, going back to creativity, the idea of generic doesn't exist in my vocabulary. I don't do anything generic. And that's important, is that every individual coming to you is somebody with very different needs. There might be some commonalities, some similarities with some of the people that you're helping, but there will always be something very, very different. So a qualified careers practitioner is also a great listener. You know, go out there, do some training that teaches you how to listen, do some training that teaches you how to ask those questions. Learn from all kinds of fields. You don't need a career development degree right now, and that's one thing that we are trying to change, is the formal qualifications for careers practitioners. But right now, what you do need is to make the profession better than it already is, because your impact on a young person is going to leave a lifelong impact, not just on them, but on anyone that they speak to. So I know that every time I'm helping somebody, I'm either doing better than the person that helped them before, or I am having to repair any of the damage that was done by the person before. So I always say, if you're going to be a careers practitioner, you need to know who you're helping, who you want to be helping. You need to know where you need help and where you have those strengths. You want to be creative, and you have to multitask. You have to really gain the skills: listening, curiosity, writing, reading, researching, and definitely networking. So those would be my top tips.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know the people that listen to this are other professionals in the counseling realm. Now, they may come from different counseling backgrounds, but I know that we all have commonalities, and I know that each person that listens to this will get something from today's episode. Thank you so much, Maria, for sharing your wisdom, and I appreciate it. I even learned a few things. And if people want to get in touch with you, Maria, how can they do so?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can find me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, oh gosh, where else am I? My website, and it's all the same. It's all my name, Maria Vitoratos. So definitely reach out. I always answer any messages or emails that I receive. It might take me a couple of days sometimes to do that, but I never leave a message unturned.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your amazing talents and gifts that you're bringing into the world. And thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode. Thank you, Maria. And I will catch you all on the very next episode.
Thank you, Katrina.
Did you love the episode? I hope you're feeling inspired and no longer feeling alone out there, and you're ready to evolve and become a better person. Make sure that you share this podcast or take a screenshot and post it on your social media. That's how you help spread this podcast organically, and people can find it much easier when you share, or share it with a loved one. I'm your host, Katrina Marie, and make it your mission to be a blessing in someone else's life today.